They can't underestimate him.
Yeah, definitely can't underestimate them after what happened to Free Marcy, but we are ready to head into game. More of Souls, of course, will be that first map, and it's going to be interesting. This is Korea versus ANZ once again. Team Psy, of course, coming out of Australia, whereas GOINMUL from Korea, and Korea definitely providing some interesting strategies from us in game 1. We'll have to see how this team, GOINMUL, does in series number 3.
All right, Big Pull is going to be the name of the game here, and More of Souls, as we've seen it in the time trials, we saw it in the past couple of games as well. You can get through this dungeon in about 4 big pulls if you don't really count Helia going into the game.
Yeah, but you're seeing here just the usual standard, trying to skip around, of course, that first jailer. You have 2 ways to do it. If you're able to get a sap or an prison out on them, you can do so as well, or by running up over, of course, the skeletons of that of the dragon there. And you've seen as they are pulling everything in to Yimaron, making sure they're getting everything in together. It's very, very important to make sure that they're watching out for a lot of the AoE fears that are going to be going out by the king, and of course so much AoE damage. And you're always seeing the first death care coming out in a Chiverism by Team Psy.
Yeah, not the best of situations to be in. Now, one thing is important to point out as well is that these regions as a whole have been really favoring so much range potential in this. So, for example, on the side of GOINMUL, you've got the Warlock there. You're going to be throwing out those Seeds of Corruption constantly. Even with, the Solar Siege, you're going to have a lot of extra damage being pumped at in the AoE situation going into this first attack.
That's right, and you're seeing, of course, just huge control to be making sure that you're avoiding this. And like you said, there is a lot more range focus in ANZ and in the Korean teams as we've been seeing, but you're still seeing just the huge danger that it can have as GOINMUL is just losing their hunter there again. There can be just so much damage you have to watch out for from any of the puddle debuffs that are splashing, putting so much AoE damage out from the spear that gets thrown, can be dragging in range players, of course, into a lot of those mobs. So getting everything cleaned up there is so key, making sure they're dealing with the bursting, and phenomenal job by both paladins, make sure people are staying safe.
It's not quite like the self-sustained potential of, say, Skyline D from China that had double rogue, so you've got double cheat deaths. When you have hunters, like marksman hunters available to you, you have to actively anticipate that kind of damage coming in, so you can then pop turtle before that preemptively before you die off. So very, very dangerous situations for them.
That's right, and you're seeing you're just very clean overall, pending those 1 deaths, but it's very hard to be able to get out of the huge pulls like that without taking a little bit of scarring along the way. So very close in terms of the damage that they are dealing. You see the hunter again, making sure you're standing right next to the horn, activating the seconds going up. Mage for Team Psy doing the exact same thing and preparing for what is probably some of the most annoying pulls to kind of deal with when you are into these very tight corners, these tight situations that you have to be dealing with here, having to deal with barrels as you're seeing that GOINMUL is engaging with, having to deal with a lot of the stalkers that are just going to be spawning these little clones of themselves, striking out there before they're actually going to be able to be damaged again. And you're also watching as they're pulling a lot of these shadow dogs in. You're seeing, of course, Hobel for Team GOINMUL being the furthest player away, so you're going to be expecting a lot of the dogs, if they're going to live through those group wide stuns, to be able to leap out there. So very good move, making sure there's defenses up for Hobel to be able to sustain that, as you've seen Team Psy here having a little bit of a rougher time.
Yeah, at least though, Dino is actually going to go down there, so he needs to res up quickly, but he loses a few more members. A bit of a catastrophe there for Sign, as a lot of the moves from these packs are anticipated. You can know that they're about to be activated in that certain area, but as you say, there's just so many of them that go down, and it can get a little bit overwhelming, especially when you've got the affixes that we have available to us.
That's right, and you're seeing for Team GOINMUL, you're seeing Stillwell running ahead, dragging that Mariner. It's very important to make sure that you're getting meleeed as infrequently as possible by the Mariner, because you do have to watch out for the Lantern that just deals so much AoE damage. So as he's able to quickly run past the Mariner, he's of course deactivate, or he's making sure that the Lantern will not activate. The team's able to get all their food buffs, as of course you see Saras, the Paladin, able to actually start rezzing up Stillwell.
And Poon with the aspect of the turtle and Sky Step Potion, just being able to get that good old reset, as you say. So not too bad. And they're going to pull these 2 guys up towards the boss by the looks of things, so they can start working on that and getting this flowing. Because right now GOINMUL's a little bit behind in terms of the percentage base, and it's looking okay for Sign as long as they don't lose too many deaths. Because deaths are very impactful in More of Souls because it is such a short dungeon. An extra 5 seconds here or there can really cost you a win in the end.
So you're seeing a little bit of different strategy coming down here by GOINMUL, making sure they're getting the champions along with some of the extra trash packs that are down the bridge there, or sorry, down the stairs there, as against Team Psy, pulling those champions right up into Harboron, engaging with them, getting that extra cleave damage going.
Not doing too bad. Of course, there's a lot of things to be dealing with. You've already seen more of Souls quite a bit here, and they're going quite low, so they've got to be very, very careful about that here to sign. As you're going to have to deal with the Scythe, of course, and you're going to have to deal with all of these ads that are spawning from players specifically. So if you can be near one another when those are going to spawn, you can be able to bring them down quite quick.
That's right, and making sure you're, of course, having, as you're seeing Strikeline, Poom, and, of course, Rusan are standing in front of where the team wants to be able to go.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're able to avoid a lot of the void zones that will be spawning there, and making sure you're kind of setting the stage for where everybody is going to be going from there. Then, of course, as you're seeing, spreading out right before the quaking goes out. So I really like this, and you're going to start seeing them collapse kind of once again right before the next servant gets popped out, and able to actually stand very close together for this fragment. Getting in close, as you see, it's on Rusan. He's choosing not to block this one. So that way you're actually going to be able to deal with a lot of the ad spawns, be able to get them down very, very quickly. And, of course, as you're seeing, again, Poom setting the stage for where that ad is going to be spawning, making sure it's going to be a lot easier for them to down it very rapidly and make sure it's interrupted.
Yeah, and repositioning with the disengage, very good moves by him. Just getting the damage out wherever he can. You always want to get that interrupt out, of course. If it does go off, it's a bit of a catastrophe in these kind of fights. But Harbor on, as long as you're controlling the space and as long as you're not getting hit by the Scythe, there's not too many threats, especially with these affixes. You know, bursting's not going to really hurt you too much during this. Quaking is okay, especially with a ranged group. They're already kind of spread out anyway. The only thing you've got to worry about is being interrupted in your cast, and you know, a healer's not going to let that happen yet.
That's exactly right. And you're seeing, of course, having to deal with less fragments. The fragments, of course, will stun the affected player and deal quite a bit of ticking damage until all the clones of the player are actually killed.
Yeah.
So Rusan dropping quite low, but you need to make sure you're getting topped off quick and easily. Of course, just the constant focus of dodging the Scythe, you know, and avoiding getting into any kind of nasty scenarios, because while you never want to be jumping into those void zones, if you need to actually dodge the Scythe, it's going to be worthwhile. And of course, as you're seeing, you want to start seeing that posturing, making sure they're getting near the gate. We've seen a lot of teams so far tonight making sure they're running right away, getting onto the deck, getting in front of all these mobs, and we're going to see the same thing coming out of Team SIGH here.
And right now, GOINMUL is hoping that SIGH messes up this big pull. But usually this is quite well versed. Usually Blood Death Knight is able to deal with this quite nicely. Ooh, very low though there for a moment, as the Marksman Hunter is going to be pumping out a lot of damage here with those multi-shots as well as the mark shots coming out. Likewise though, so can the Mage catch up. Oh, one death though will end up happening here as our Windwalker Monk goes down for a second.
I mean, you're seeing the bop was coming in onto Shivers to make sure that you're avoiding that very same scenario, but the second that falls off, full front of damage that can happen there. Yeah. And they are kiting back. This actually is getting a lot more hectic here. That Saris is just doing whatever he can just to make sure everyone's going to be in just a favorable position. It just gets so scary when you have to really be worrying about all the damage. You've seen the whirlpools that are going off freely. You've seen Purgatory, for example, already been popped onto the tank, just really doing whatever they can here. Strikeline just doing whatever he can to make sure he's keeping his teams alive.
Yeah, and when you have to start kiting these things as the Blood Death Knight, there is a little bit of damage lost here and there, of course, with things like, you know, the Flame Strike going down. Generally, you'll have the Flame Patch talent being taken for those mages, and of course, everything's being kited out of that with it whilst it's down for 8 seconds. So it's a small loss here and there, so it will take a little bit longer time to actually clean that up, whilst GOINMUL is now attempting to clean up the boat themselves.
That's right, and they're kind of in a similar scenario, so this is going to be all about, you know, the extra deaths that are going out. Saris, of course, is popping, you know, getting an extra shield up onto himself, probably using the Ishkar's Fel Shield emitter to make sure you're just being in a more favorable position. And this is where you, as a healer, you want to be playing as safely as possible, because as we've seen in the past, especially in the very first game that we had with Team BTS and Team Free Marcy, it's all about safety here. Losing anybody, it's just going to be eating up so much of your time.
And Skull, I mean, you know, we've seen him a few times already today, but the one thing you got to really look out for is his little teleport, and then make sure that you're interrupting the cast right on after, so you're not causing yourself too many problems. Now, you can see your GOINMUL as well while all of this was going on. Cleaned up the boat quite nicely. I think that the Blood Death Knight with the Warlock in tandem, especially if he swapped into the ring to get the full slow and make it a little bit easier for the kiting potential, it's much easier for them to start cleaning up that boat compared to the composition that we saw from SIGH.
That's right, and we're seeing, of course, just being able to take advantage of, you know, the more longer-lasting slow there when they need to be making sure they get the kite out. Thankfully for neither team did have any kind of full wipe. They just having to mop up some of those extra deaths to make things so much more painful to deal with, like losing, for example, Shivers, like you were seeing Poom and Rusan just ramping up so heavily in damage when they made that huge pull. But right as Bop fell off, you were seeing Shivers going down, and it just makes it so much rougher to be able to have those clean pulls, losing out on the extra DPSer, and losing out, especially if you're about to have like all your cooldowns up, you know, and being able to get them down so quickly. So It's a little bit sloppier on both sides, but you're seeing, Sai is just pulling ahead, getting the last bit of trash completed, and moving on to Helia here.
Yeah, and it's about, 20, 25 seconds ahead if you judge by how much Scarlet is going to take here for the moment. So, with Sign setting up against this boss now, once again, it's very simple. It's the 6 tentacles killed here. Blood Nephite's going to need to pick up those destroying tentacles. I can't remember what the damn name is, but there you go.
The Destructor.
The Destructor. It started with D. I've got it all good. And, ultimately, as long as he's able to tank those and get these down, you've got enough cleave potential with the mark shots coming out as well here from the Hunter to eventually clean these up quite quickly.
Yeah, but that's one of the nicest things, being able to get all the graspings taken care of almost immediately there. When you have such a large hitbox, and you're able to, especially as a paladin, you're able to get your consecration, be able to hit all of them very, very easily. Strike line does go down. He's moving just a little bit too slowly to get away from, of course, just the AoE that will dominate one side. But the side does not have a battle res available to them, so they need to be able to just sit through this. But you are seeing, they're all just dying. They know that they're not going to be able to last through this. You're seeing Dino going down, and the Destructor Tentacle is just going to be wiping the entire group. They need to, get back together and get there immediately, because they're going to be losing out on a lot of time.
At that point, you try and wipe as quickly as possible when you don't have it. And it just came up, the battle res. So really, really unfortunate there for them while that was happening. And now Helia on the other side here for GOINMUL. Being controlled at the moment, as they're going to try and just dodge on that right-hand side. No damage was really taken. So just destroying off that Destructor Tentacle and going back onto the 2 gripping ones so they can get into that second phase.
That's right, and you're seeing, just, of course, making sure, as you're seeing that constant positioning there, making sure they're hugging the sides. It is kind of interesting to see Team Sai has not been resing up yet. We are going in, of course, into full screen here for Team GOINMUL, making sure that they're staking to the sides of the ship to make sure they're dodging a lot of these tentacles that will be coming up. Very important. You will have some of the Destructor Tentacles, for example, coming up into the middle of the ship that you will have to kill, but you also periodically have a number of tentacles that will just shoot themselves up, do a little AoE close by to them, and then, of course, just go back down. So it's very important just to be hugging the sides and staying away from them whenever you can.
Yeah, and just kind of periodically moving back as well as that little bit of AoE gets thrown on out there. So you're moving back to the back of the ship there, and eventually it will be destroyed. Helia comes into full force, and now, but losing 2 members at the very beginning of that.
You're seeing, of course, the quick battle res coming out onto Stillwell, but they do lose Harvey and Hobel, so this is not set in stone for Sai just yet. They have used all their battle reses, so they will be doing whatever they can to just make sure that they're 3-manning this. But they are actually just having the mass death. Okay, they are having the mass death. They are going to get that reset. Maybe it's also the knowledge that, Team Sai has also died as well. So the big problem when you're having these, mass deaths going on is it's very important to note that you do have to do the entire phase all over again. When the ship does reform, you still have to go back and deal with those tentacles.
Hellions construction workers back in force as quickly as possible, and so they will be running on back there. But yeah, not the most common of places to actually wipe when you're coming into this. Sometimes you see it, maybe a little bit of a mishap, but that went from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds. Unfortunate for them.
That's right, and you're seeing, they're getting set up again. They're getting just set up as best as they can. They will not have lust, unfortunately, for this, so they might actually have to kill, an extra Destructor Tentacle, or just make sure that it's going to be tanked, and just kind of watch the positioning that they'll have access to. It's very important just to make sure that they're going to be able to just play cleanly, play safe. They still do not have any battle reses left available to them, and just try to work out some of these mistakes, make sure it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, so they're going to start working on the Destructor Tentacle again here, making sure that their ranged members are not going to be susceptible to the tentacles at the back. I wonder how Sai is doing while all of this is going on here. GOINMUL, though, still just working on the tentacles and just avoiding the AoE on that right-hand side once again. Able to move to the left, no damage taken.
That's right, and taking that next Grasping Tentacle, they do have to wait a little bit for the next one to be spawning up. Meanwhile, they're transitioning over to the Destructor, making sure that they have to make sure that they're dealing with this as quickly as possible, because you have to watch out for the Destructor Tentacles will soon spawn more, and they always need to make sure they're tanked by someone. Yeah. So having to watch out, and it's very kind of risky watching through the Hobel taking his Warlock Gateway right as, of course, you're having Saris get a quick Dispel out. You have to really watch out for the ticking damage from the dot that's going out, but also, of course, the AoE effect that will spawn there. So they're trying to work on just getting these last couple tentacles down before they're able to go back again to the boss.
Yeah, as you say, it can be really horrendous if the tank isn't right next to those Destructor Tentacles, hitting the entire boat for what feels like my entire health pool. It's not quite there, but it really, really hurts. It's not something that you want to happen to your entire team. And then when pushing into the next phase, of course, it's just a lot of things that you need to deal with themselves. As they're finally getting down in this other Destructor Tentacle and moving on to the grippings, and now we will see that transition again. Hopefully they control this a little bit better than the previous moments.
That's right, and it's very important. Just as you're in this situation, a lot of times you will have double debuffs coming out. So making sure you're able to get them dispelled as rapidly as possible, and maybe just letting Stillwells, for example, run off normally. That way you're able to get to spell out immediately once this phase begins. And again, if you're going to be able to have like Leech or something like that from the DK, you're able to kind of lean on that Leech just to make sure that you're able to get everybody topped off, but also just you can put out more damage as a healer and you can kind of ignore people just for a couple seconds. Yeah,
checking in with Sign again. They are still behind here whilst they're still in the first phase of Helia, so it may have had another wipe while that was going on. A bit unfortunate here against GOINMUL, but GOINMUL's just getting those interrupts down. You only need the 2 people to be on that cycle for the interrupts, right? And then there's quite a little bit of extra AoE to actually be avoiding. Obviously the green swirl is coming down, and then the breath that covers, you know, portions of the boat, which is flagged is the best way to describe it.
Yep, and it's always important to note the positioning that you're seeing here, especially at a Stillwell. You know, being right in that middle where he is standing is generally going to be one of the safest areas really to watch out for, because you will have to, of course, you'll see more symmetric holes in where the actual ship can spawn at. So it's very important to be able to watch out from where those might be spawning and finding the most ideal area. So, you know, dead center, or looking at the far left where Saris is standing, or on the far right parallel to where Saris is right now. Those are generally the big areas that you want to be standing in to help avoid where tentacles might be spawning at, because you will see right there, just another tentacle spawns every single time that she transitions.
And usually, you know, when you're a 5-man, you just, especially with Quaking, you have very set spots where you're going to spread yourself out here on this transition phase. You don't really want to be overlapping or being anywhere near each other, and you especially don't want to be near the tentacles, as you're mentioning. Obviously, you could see before, but the Blood DK just soaking up one of those breaths with AMS. Why on earth not? If you can do it, it's okay. You don't need AMS for anything else in this fight at the moment, so it's fine.
Yep, and you're seeing here 71% here on Helia, making sure they're getting him down. GOINMUL sealing out after a pretty patchy game here, sealing out first game.
Leanest we've seen, but wipes galore, and GOINMUL come out on top. And I mean, honestly, that was, it looked like it was everything in favor of Psy for such a long time there. But like you said during the cast, not the place that we expect to see people wiping, especially teams of this caliber.
That's right, and that was one of the things, is that this is one of the maps that we've seen through the time trials. This is one of the maps that we've constantly been able to see, you know, throughout this expansion. So this is really one of the, you know, a lot better play by them. And it kind of even looked like when Team Psy wasn't having, of course, their tank resing up, it seemed like they kind of almost threw in the towel there when they weren't even expecting GOINMUL to have that wipe, so they could have really gotten back into the game a lot faster.
Yeah, I wonder if that's maybe what happened. It's like
maybe the tilt setting in.
You don't expect someone else to wipe on that boss. It seemed like it was such a close race up until that point, but GOINMUL able to pull ahead, and hey, that's a big victory for Korea.
Yeah, it definitely is, especially since Psy came in second seed, correct?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
So